Good morning, everyone. This is the contract negotiation between the Boise Police Union and the city of Boise. If we could just go around and introduce ourselves for the record, I would appreciate it. My name is Courtney Washburn. I'm the chief of staff for the city of Boise.
Todd Hanchett with Stoll Reeves.
Ron Weiniger, Chief of Police.
Guy Helm, Union Attorney.
Damon Jones, Union.
Darren Lee, Union.
AJ Veens, Union.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so where we left off last time, the union had proposed a number. Well, let me step back. We had agreed that move forward with making some of their economic proposals. We still have a couple of non-economic proposals on the table that we're still asking for the union's consideration on. Specifically, those are proposals 12 and 17, one related to the promotional process and the other related to what's under the heading shifts and shifts. So I just wanted to note, just so we're all on the same page, that we're still looking for consideration on those, and that those are items that are important to the department. To the city.
Understood.
So with that, would you like to continue with the union's economic items?
I believe we left off with currently waiting for replies from the city for multiple proposals at this point. Do you guys have any of those ready for us, or?
On the economics, we can't until we see the full picture from the union. And I hopefully that makes sense. We're not trying to play games or anything. We need to see what the total package looks like that the union's proposing, so that we can figure out how best to respond to that.
Okay, so you're saying, just to clarify, all economic items need to be brought forth for you in order to look at them as a whole.
That's correct.
So we're not going to look at individual proposals or we're not going to make final decisions on anything without seeing the entire picture.
Correct. And I think, and I think that's for the union's benefit as well. There are, the various individual proposals have roll-up costs, and without knowing what else is coming, we can't it wouldn't be wise for us to say yes to, some sort of a shift differential, not understanding, what the wage proposal is going to be. So that's how we're looking at it. That's the information we need in order to be able to respond.
Okay.
So I think the other piece of information we're missing is when you presented your economic proposals, they didn't have the economic impact associated with them. So were you able to take the staffing information we sent and put numbers to any of these?
Yes, the ones we've been able to run more accurately based on the fringe rate given, the FTE slots given. We were able to kind of have a better estimate on what we were trying to cost out.
Does the city have any more non-economic proposals they want to send to us?
We do not at this time.
Okay. And do you have any economic proposals you want to send to us?
We do not at this time.
Okay. So how many more non-economic proposals will the city have? I mean, we mentioned these two, the promotion process and the shift ones that were important. What other ones do you have?
Well, I can't tell you that sitting here right now. I mean, we agreed last time that the ground rules, we would treat our third session as the next set of meetings. So I can't sit here and tell you what those might be, just the same as you probably can't tell me what other non-economic proposals the union might develop between now and next time. I'm not anticipating a significant number of them, frankly. But I don't have any for you right now.
Well, and just like you pointed out, you need to have it so you can look at it in a package. We need to have your proposals as well, so we can look at it as a package too. And if there's give and take to be had, we need to be able to do that. So we kind of need the same thing.
Understood.
So there's no economic items you guys are proposing today?
Not at this time.
Okay.
So the question, I guess the question being is if, we submit our economic proposals today, will you have an economic package to propose to us today?
I would sure hope so. Yes. I mean, I don't know what I can't project what this session's going to look like. So if you run those out right now, we talk through them, we get our questions answered, we will go back and work on that. Yes. And I would then plan to come back with a response for you. But if the union has a number of proposals that takes the better part of the day, then I can't promise you that we'll come back today. I guess when I feel like we're, I don't know, talking past each other a little bit. This is part of the reason why we had the ground rules, at least in my view. The ground rules are to sort of organize this so that we can get through one thing, check it off, to Damon's point, check it off the list. We're done with non-economic issues, move on to economics. I understand that there's, some process that's going to go into that, you all are still looking at those, and that's fine. And that's why we didn't want to hold that up just because of that we hadn't reached agreement on a couple of non-economic items. Our goal is to get to a contract as quickly and efficiently as possible. For that reason, it wouldn't be helpful for us to come back next session and bombard you with a bunch of new non-economics. That's not our intent. That's not our plan. Based on the conversation we had last time, the agreement we have is that would still theoretically be possible.
Yes,
I don't think it would be beneficial.
agreed.
And so what I'm saying is we have no active plan to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't think we'll need to do that.
Yeah.
But what we do need from our side in order to be able to move forward is we need to understand what the union is looking for from an economic standpoint. So
Okay.
that we can analyze it and then be responsive, because it helps us understand, at least it often can help us understand what your priorities are.
Yeah.
Because there's not an unlimited pot of money. And so if we can allocate it in certain ways that are more beneficial to the membership, we're happy to do that, but we need to see what that looks like.
Understood. We agree. So we will probably need to take 10. We assumed, and this is our, we were assuming we would hear back on some of those counters. But if we could just take 10, we could get those lined up and squared away for you guys so that we can get those
Sure.
kind of given as smoothly as possible.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
That sounds
And
good.
then any non-economic items that you still have would be good too. So we could start looking at those and working through those. So
Sure.
I think we're on the same page relatively on the financial part, but the non-economics that you have, the non-economic items, if you could send those to us after this break, then we could put those aside, go on to the economics.
Sure.
So 9, 10, 9, 11. Are we good with 9, 25?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I should definitely get a mouse, but today we're gonna try that. It's probably gonna create a whole, I don't know.
Don't mess with the system.
Blow my computer up right now.
A little newer than.
But I appreciate it. I know. I'm definitely not as fast as I should be. Okay, in regards to, so we were able to get some of those financials you guys were asking for the proposals that we'd previously sent. So in regards to
Darren, can you just tell me where they are? Is this a what day folder before you?
3
3?
be last Friday, or the last Friday we met.
Let me pull those up for you then. Yep, go there.
Union?
So day 3, in regards to our proposal A, it'll be shift diff rewrite.
Okay.
That's what that one is called. Again, that was a shift differential increase of 2%, swing in that shift. Running the numbers based on that, so a 2% increase to that. Right now, that shift diff is covering approximately, we take 133 officers in our department, so it's half of the department is receiving that shift differential. A 2% increase for that would go to roughly $330,000. And that's based on the average fringe for 130, give or take. We can't predict which officers are going to go to which shift, but currently, as we're tracking it, we've got about 130 officers who are receiving that shift differential. So a 2% increase would be approximately $330,000 for that.
Did you come up with that based on an average or just like real time today?
Which part, the cost or the how many
Number.
officers are receiving the fringe? I think we literally went through the list.
It's based on average.
Average
It's based on average,
over like what time frame?
annual. That's an annual based on the average fringe.
Question.
One of the proposals, proposal M, the sergeant admin pay. One that is in regards to the canines sergeants as well as the drone operator sergeant. Just running that out, the canine, it would be approximately $10,515 for that increase.
Do you happen to know how many positions that impacts when you do it? 2?
2.
Just 2 positions in the city?
Yes, there's 1 canine sergeant and 1 drone sergeant currently.
And that 10,000 increases just for the canine portion, because that's an increase of 2 hours.
Doesn't include primary.
The drone sergeant will be an increase of $5,000, 5,415, give or take.
Sorry, so about 10,005 was the.
Oh,
canine.
yes, double.
That's gonna double.
Yeah.
You lost me.
So if we read the sergeant admin pay one, it is, we are bringing in 2 different positions to start receiving admin pay, the drone operator sergeant, as well as the canine sergeant.
Yeah.
Within the canine itself, we have 2 sergeants that will actually benefit from that. And so the 10,515, we're going to double that. And then the drone sergeant is just 1 sergeant, and that's receiving just 1 hour. So that would be approximately $5,415.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was my error. I misspoke. I forgot about
Was it
the
2?
airport. Yes, it is. Right, it's 3. It's the 2
Got it.
canine and the 1 drone. That's my fault.
Got it. Thank you.
And those numbers are based on those current sergeants' OT fringe rate.
Got you. Does your proposal M impact your proposal N when it comes to the increased overtime? So do the 2 canine sergeants then also get your proposed additional overtime? Just so I understand the impact to a canine sergeant.
Like, is the canine, does the sergeant have a dog?
Well, I just want to know from your assessment if your proposal relates to the proposal regarding sergeants.
No, the proposal N, I believe, is just for officers with their canine care.
Gotcha.
That's for having a dog. Now, on that subject of the canine proposal in general, now that we've had our numbers, we've been able to run them. We're going to resubmit the canine one. Our numbers came out not how we perceived them to come out as. And so we are going to have to rewrite the K-9 one.
So proposal N.
Proposal N will be resubmitted with different numbers because the number that was projected was not what the union anticipated. And go list. The other one was you're asking for memorializing the FTO MOB. Projecting numbers on that, we can't predict how many FTOs are going to get hired or not. So we don't have a cost analysis on that one because that number fluctuates, as well as the VIBA one. We were unable to run a cost analysis for that one at this time to be able to show how much that 0.5% increase on the city's half, what that would project out over 4 years.
Okay, so those were proposals. The VIBA is F and looks like FTO is R.
Yes,
Gotcha.
that is correct.
So in order for me to understand the economic impact of R and F, we're gonna have to come to some sort of assumption. So if you guys can't determine the economic impact of RF, I'm wondering how the city is supposed to. Like, one of your proposals, you had an average over an annual basis, like we need to at least agree to something so that we understand the economic.
R is the FTO one and F is the VIBA one.
Well, the FTO one, that's going to be based on the chief of police deciding how many FTOs he needs based on the amount of people we're hiring.
Right, but we
Yeah.
still need to have some sort of basis to run the numbers of the economic impact. So is that an average annually? Do you want to take the last 2 years?
Yeah, we can just grab an average of how many FTOs we currently have. We can try and project that.
We've been running this for the last 2 years in the current contract, right? So-
Yes,
Yeah.
it's been running, yeah.
So if you have 40 field training officers, roughly that 5% on their base is 243,276.80.
Say that number one more time, sorry.
243,276.80.
And that's for how many? 40
That's for 40 based on average fringe,
at 5%.
5%.
And do you have any data over the last couple of years as to how many training hours were provided by any chance? So in other words, they get the additional 5% when they have a trainee in the car. Do we know how many hours that has averaged over the last couple of years?
I don't, I would suspect you probably could get that data easier than me.
Yeah.
From training.
And you're talking specifically just the active 5% while somebody's in the car? Yeah.
I have no way to
Probably
predict that or get that
training.
information.
Probably training division is going to have that way more accurate than what we could find. And in regards to VIBA, we'll have to go ask some questions.
Give you,
The average over the last 2 years or something? Or who's,
Yeah, we'd have to.
I mean, you understand my position. I can't agree to anything if I don't understand at least generally the financial consequences.
We might have to ask them. Yeah. So we will get back to you on the Viva one.
If you need more information from the city, just let us know.
I'm assuming you'll be proposing F
And
include the 4 years instead of 3.
we will yeah, now that we've verbally agreed, I don't think we've signed the 4-year. Or have we signed the?
Right.
Yes, we've verbally have TA'd that. I don't think we've written it. But yeah, we could resubmit that one in order to align with a 4-year projection. So those were our financials that we were able to give to you at this time, for the proposals we've already submitted. In regards to our discussion around non-economic items, that is what we're wanting to kind of sign off with and be done with before we could move into the economic realm. Clear that's being projected from both sides here and in keeping with the ground rules themselves. Outside of the, and we can discuss these also, but the promotional process as well as the shift, what is the official name for it? The SROs asking for their
Yep. Shift changes, I think is that
Shift
section.
we can call it shift changes. Here, I can just pull them up. The shift changes as well as the promotional process one. Are there any other non-economic items that we need to look at from the city side before we discuss those other two? Or do you guys have any other non-economic items to bring forward?
No, we do not right now.
Okay. So in regards to the two that we said we would go back and reconsider, we've talked about them, we've discussed them. Specifically for the shift changes one, we've spoken to our members. And that one is, simply we can't reach an agreement with the body. The body does not agree to that one. Speaking to the SROs, that is something that they're not willing to even vote for if we were to take this contract back to the body. Because it's not just us making executive decisions here. We take this TA back to the membership. And membership ultimately decides if this is a contract that they are comfortable with agreeing to. And they made it pretty clear, mandated 5/8 for SROs is not something we're gonna vote for.
How many SROs do we have?
Anywhere between 16, 17?
And did you ask the 16 or 17 first?
We did, yes. We spoke to, we had a meeting where about 11 of them showed up, 11, 12 of them showed up. Speaking with them.
Yeah, and listen, that's not to say, we talked last time about some administrative remedies that the department could do, and I think our members would like to see some of those internal remedies take place, and maybe 4 years from now, if there's been some improvement on the department side with those administrative remedies, might be worth looking at. But until we see some sort of progress internally, it's not gonna happen.
And the administrative remedies, I think I wasn't entirely clear on what the suggestions were around that last time. Can you refresh me on that.
Yeah, I mean, we can, if we want to, yeah, we can go into that. So we personally spoke, we had a meeting.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm not gonna, yeah.
I'll just bring the notes up from last time.
I'm not gonna read this. We had a write-up. Yes, Rose gave me a write-up, but it's long, so I'm gonna paraphrase parts of it, but we had a meeting with the SROs, about 11 or 12 of them showed up because we wanted to make sure we
Sure.
were on the same page with them, and they voiced some of their concerns that they believe ultimately were kind of in agreement with our initial assessment that we thought there were some administrative issues that could be addressed first in order to ease this burden for them. One of the main things that they told us as well is that they are being tasked with a caseload that is pulling them outside of the schools. A lot of times these cases are coming from varying directions, including referrals from patrol. These are juvenile situations that happen outside of a school. Just an officer hearing, oh, it's a kid under 18. They don't finish the investigation. They just stop everything and they ship it to an SRO. And that SRO now has to kind of put all the pieces back together and put this case back together, which is ultimately pulling him out of his school to do so, simply because the person involved was under the age of 18. Could have happened anywhere in the city, but it's another issue is that health and welfare, right? We have this caseload coming in through health and welfare. Now, from what we heard from the SROs, there's a screening process for health and welfare that they're screening out their own caseload. And if there are cases that health and welfare are deciding not to investigate, they're not. We've decided to pick those ones up that health and welfare themselves are screening out. We're picking those up and we're tasking SROs with having to do follow-up on those cases as well. SROs are saying that is burdening them to where they can't even be in their schools. Not to mention when they say schools, we currently don't even have the staffing for an SRO to be in every school. We have kind of what we call a feeder school system where SROs are holding multiple schools. So we had SROs talk about in this meeting how there are days where they're never in a school. They're literally driving from school to school, putting out fires almost as an on-call roving SRO because there's so many schools that are unmanned or they have so many under their stewardship that they can't even, they're not even fulfilling their role of community outreach. They're not even fulfilling their role of education and contacting these students. They're just getting to the school to handle the problem that's at hand, what they're being called there to do, and then they're being called to a different school. So these are just some of the cases that was relayed to us as some of these other points that was made. Some of these cases, especially the ones filtered through health and welfare that are being volunteered, the SROs are being volunteered to take, end up being very heavy cases, felony level sex abuse cases, where the SROs are telling us that they have not received the training, not received the specialized experience or understanding on how to run these cases. And so it's a concern as a disservice to the victims and the family and the community as a whole that we are kind of putting these SROs in a situation where they don't want to mess this up and they don't want to, in a high liability situation, make a mistake that could lead to some consequences. Not to say that we don't train our police officers effectively. When we are handing this caseload to these SROs and suddenly expecting them to do specialized things as creating cares interviews and working and going in, and we have a specialized unit for it, and they're not in that unit, and yet they're being tasked with the same level of items. It's a cause for concern.
So was the discussion about not working 5 days a week, the remedy you discussed was the workload, not the coverage? Is that?
So we asked them,
I see It's needed in both places. So for me, it's not an either or. So I'm trying to understand how to get our client the coverage they're asking for, which are the school districts. I'm understanding there are some other elements here, but what was the consideration in improving customer service during the school day? Or was there none?
Are you saying during this, like while they're there?
Mhm.
Is for them, their main concern was step one being there. And I know that's going to come back to a staffing issue. We just don't have the bodies to fulfill that fully because we don't have the bodies to put an SRO in every single school, junior high and elementary school. We used to have an ESRO program that's since been cut. We just don't have the numbers to put a body in every school. And so
But-
there's, sorry.
Sorry, in some cases we do though, they're just not working 5/8, right?
Right.
Okay,
They're working 4/10s. And even on those 4 of the 10, they're not in their school anyway. So before we make them work 5 days a week, the union would like to see them actually be in their school those 4 days a week. Because if we go to 5/8, they're just going to be doing the same thing anyway. They're going to be running around not in their school. This is not going to remedy the problem. Those 8-hour shifts likely are going to turn into 10-hour shifts with the caseload. And so now we're going to have SROs working 50-hour weeks, not in their schools either. So, and I believe Evan Bradley, when he was here last time, I hope he made it very clear, and the union wants to absolutely reiterate this. I ultimately believe our mission is totally the same. We want our officers in the schools. We want our SROs in the school. We truly believe that COD, Community Outreach Division, is meant for community outreach. It is education first. It is contact with law enforcement on a level so that these youth feel comfortable with law enforcement in their city. And that it's a contact of trust, not a contact of fear. If we don't have the SROs in the school, it doesn't matter. They could work 5/10s. Doesn't matter if the officer's not even there.
I just have a question and it could be for the police chief or perhaps are we tracking how many hours the SROs spend in schools versus out of schools? Is that part of our data tracking system?
I believe
The
so.
union doesn't track that.
Do the individual members, when they do a week, don't track the hours they're in the school or hours they're out of school?
Not that we're aware of.
I have,
So,
don't know that.
so the information you're presenting about coverage is anecdotal?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
That's what we heard. For me, it's also, I would say it's, and this is a question for you, Chief. You would know this more than me, but tell me if this is hearsay, but in that meeting, several of them brought up, and I don't know if this is something they're talking amongst themselves, like administrative issues they're trying to have fixed, but it was stated among that interview that there was a proposal either sitting on your desk or the deputy chief's desk for allocating a slot to the SROs for a juvenile detective. Is that?
That is correct.
That is correct.
There
Okay.
is discussion right now about either 1 or 2 people being assigned to investigations.
Okay. Okay, yeah, they, I don't want to make it seem like it was like rumor mill, but they were curious. That's what they'd heard. I guess there was talking among the unit that this is a way that could kind of offset that pressure. And they said it's been sitting there for a little bit and they were curious if that was even the case. So I just wanted to confirm with you if that's real or if that's just rumors getting thrown around.
Consideration as staffing.
Okay.
I mean, my challenge is that we need to establish some sort of tracking system to know if either administrative interventions or changes in staffing improves the presence in schools. So we've got to get to a better place other than it feels like I'm never at the school, right?
And that's coming from me as someone
Oh, sure.
who doesn't, I don't, I'm assuming, pure assumption here. This is total speculation from negotiator Lee. Tracking in an SRO based on their caseload by their CAD files, the calls that they have open at the time, the investigations that they're performing, I don't think it would be too hard to see whether they're physically on site at a school or if they're physically off site at a school. I think we can get that. I don't think it's anecdotal right now because I don't have the CAD files or the dashboard to pull that up for you. But again, I would take it one step further. An SRO can be in his school and not in his school at the same time, if that makes sense. He can be in his office doing casework all day and trying to contact parents over the phone or set up dates to have follow-up investigations. But he's not in his school, contacting students, making a presence, making that community outreach. And so, again, I believe our missions are aligned. I just think the mode of execution is differing right as of right now.
Again, I think my challenge is, like, in order to justify the future and administrative interventions, I would need to be able to understand if they're effective. So I'm a little concerned that we kind of know what the SROs are doing, but even when they're in the schools, they're not really in the schools. So like, with an investment of taxpayer resources to better an outcome, we're gonna have to professionalize the tracking of that, right? We can't just say, well, he wasn't really in the school, he or she, or like the client, in this case, the school districts, would like some more information about what the department is doing in their offices or with the students. So we're gonna have to.
Or offsite, okay.
We're gonna sit here 4 years from now and have no idea if we had an impact or not.
Courtney, that wouldn't come from the union
Yeah.
though. That would come
Oh,
from
no, that's fine.
management. So I was just saying, those numbers and that stuff, we don't, the
Well, your
union wouldn't
members
track.
Still have to track that.
Right, yeah, if the administration wanted to create a tracking mechanism, absolutely, but
Yeah.
we wouldn't be able to give you those.
Like I said, this is totally
Yeah.
speculating, right? I believe through CAD files, through our dashboard, we assign ourselves to calls, we put ourselves on follow-up for caseload. I think we would be able to look at that administratively and get a rough estimate right now anyway, based on what SROs are putting themselves out on, the follow-up, the cases, to even track, see whether they're in schools or not. And I don't know if I'm stepping out by saying that, that's just my
You'll
assumption.
find out.
We're gonna find out. I don't know. But I don't know. We don't have that tools.
Well, and I appreciate that. My point is, we don't know. So like, the city itself is gonna have to get to a better place of understanding with more specificity what is happening in the schools to both satisfy the school districts
Okay.
and to ensure we have actual information to back up then that our opposites aren't in the school. I think we've done progress on that.
And I gotta be honest, Courtney, I think our membership would be happy to work with the administration as that is an administrative record. The membership in that unit would be opposed to, hey, let's, every time I gotta leave and I gotta go here, hey, I mark that down to, the elementary school, or I have to go make contact with a parent. I don't think they're not willing to work with the administration, but like I said, on those administrative issues to get that data, gonna have to have some time. So, and I think we look at those and then we move from there. But I think until we have that, the solution of the problem, I think, is not an 8-hour, a 10-hour, 8-hour fix.
Chief, do you remember if any of that that she's asking for is on any of those proposals? Because usually when those proposals are set up in for detectives, that data is usually there, right? So you guys can justify adding more resources and stuff.
I do not recall
Okay.
specifics.
So let's say that we were able to navigate, I mean, we'll figure this out, I think, in terms of how often folks are getting pulled off on other items. But let's say we're able to navigate that, we get a good handle on it, we get the situation where the SROs don't feel like they're being pulled off on the other things. How does that help us deliver to the districts what we should be delivering, which is somebody in the school 5 days a week?
Is this a hypothetical you're wanting us to answer?
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to solve a problem here. And so, I mean, is the suggestion that there's going to be somebody different one day a week? Yeah, would we have a, I don't know, call it a roving SRO that,
I don't know. Once we get into hypotheticals, anything's possible. I can tell you, based on this, once we get all the administrative answers solved, having an officer there 40 hours a week is gonna be good for the schools. And they'll say, actually, we're good. We're okay.
right, well,
What
and
we can do with 5.
yeah, and having one there 5 days a week, the same person 5 days a week, based on the relationships and the interactions, seems like an important piece of this.
Okay, sure. But it's a hypothetical. We have no idea.
Well, that's not hypothetical. That's the case, I think.
It's
I mean,
what?
that having somebody there 5 days a week would be valuable, both in terms of the relationships the SRO is able to, the outreach that the SRO is able to do. And I'm assuming we've solved the caseload issue, right? But in order to deliver what we deliver to the districts,
And what is that? 5 days a
Having-
week? Is that what the
5 days a week.
the proposal from the school districts is they want SROs in schools every day of the week?
Yes,
One per school or one officer for multiple schools?
Yeah.
The elementary, middle school.
We're talking middle schools and high schools.
One per school.
Within, obviously, there's like 2 at Frank Church because of workload, but generally speaking.
And how many schools
Like
in those
SRO.
schools is that? Like a total number of schools? Like we're trying to staff every high school and middle school with an officer 5 days.
I'd have to look. but
Yeah,
it's
we need to- we would have to-
Okay.
And how many additional SROs would we need
Well,
to
that's-
expand the
yeah,
unit
That's what I
to?
was getting to. You know as well as we do. We mandate a 5/8. We already have a hard time getting people to SRO unit. The last time we opened it up, there was one person that put in maybe. We just opened it up. I saw the email yesterday or 2 days ago. I'm going to be very curious to see how many people are willing to put in. Not saying this discussion is wrong, but I'm going to be very curious to see how many people are willing to put in, seeing the current situation with the SRO unit. Having an officer in every school in middle school, complete agreement. Absolutely. Mandating for 5 days, I'm going to be very interested to see if people are willing to do that. You know as well as I do, we've been struggling with the SRO unit. We've been struggling getting people there. We've been struggling with morale. We've been struggling with a camaraderie for a lot of reasons.
And staffing. Staffing
As we
was,
came, and staffing is probably the underlying issue for all of this, and we all know that. We just don't have the bodies this department needs to efficiently and smoothly run this city as it deserves. We understand that and we agree. Mandating that to 5/8 is not going to help. It will not help. Morale will plummet. That is what we heard from their mouth in this meeting. Morale will tank. There will be people that consider leaving because 5/8 do not work for their family life. They will not work for their schedule. They will not work for their personal. And as Evan Bradley told us, he was all for the kids at his school, but his kids came first. And there were times in his life where he worked 5/8 for the school and he could do that. And then there was times he had to go to 4/10s for his home life. We mandate 5/8, there will be people that leave. I can tell you that. And I guarantee we will struggle getting people to refill those spots, not to mention expanding the unit. And I hope we don't ever have to get to a point where we have to mandate highest datas to have to fulfill COD roles in schools, because that would be a massive disservice to the schools, to the kids. I would like somebody who wants to be there. I would want an SRO who wants to be in the school, not somebody that's the highest data that just came into the department. It's like, hey, we don't have anybody that wants to be an SRO contractually mandated. Congratulations, you're now at Frank Church. Worst case scenario for both sides of the board.
But what is the solution?
I think we've,
If we need to provide 5 coverage for the schools, what would it take? Not be the case that you're describing.
well, I think the premise here is that you're starting with the need to provide 5/8 coverage. And I don't think that's the case. We have units who work Tuesday through Friday. We have units that work Monday through Thursday. as was Stan is speaking to the SRO sergeant, there's more officers working Tuesday through Friday right now than Monday through Thursday. So we have over half of the SROs are covering the schools on Fridays, which I found that interesting. One of the school district's concerns was that they weren't having officers. So the coverage is there for the model we're currently operating under. But for speaking to the SROs, what's told to us, mandating 5/8 will not help this situation when there are, we believe, administrative things that we can fix first to offload that burden and put them in the schools more.
So I want to make sure I understand something that you said. You said the coverage is there under the current model,
We have,
and leaving aside the load issue, but
yeah, there are.
are you saying we have a sufficient number of people working shifts that overlap such that each school is covered every day of the week?
We have, I don't even know how many feeder model schools we have. How many, I had an SRO tell me that he's covering 6 to 8 schools. So in my opinion, no, we don't have coverage anyway, right?
Got
So
it.
if we're wanting to mandate.
That's what I was trying to make sure I understood.
So it's like, our current model is the feeder system model. So it's like, even if they're in a school, which school, and those other schools aren't getting somebody in their school. So theoretically, even if we mandate 5/8, there's always going to be a school who doesn't have an SRO. So there will always be frustration because we don't have the bodies. We don't have the numbers. And again, the reason we brought these up, apologies. The reason we brought these up is we wanted to speak to the SROs. We wanted to speak to the members. I don't get to just sit up here and make decisions willy-nilly. I'm not judge, jury, and executioner. We have to bring something back to the membership. And mandated 5/8 was not popular at all. Very loud and clear. So even if hypothetically, in this hypothetical situation, even if we solve this caseload and the administrative issues are met to a point, and if some reason we decide to TA a 5/8, we would have a very hard time getting that passed.
Well, I appreciate the discussion. I think there's still some information gathering to do. I mean, I understand that it's not a popular notion amongst the SROs that you spoke with. Not everything is always going to be popular. But as a part of a complete negotiation, there are things that people are going to like, there are things that people are not going to like. And so,
Yeah.
I think we hear what you're saying. Hopefully you hear what we're saying, which is that we have a problem that we need to solve.
Yeah.
And we're looking
No, I
to work with the department to help solve that.
I think that's been made very clear. And I don't want you guys to think that we're trying to just sweep this under the rug. That's not the case at all. It was made very clear to us. We spoke to SROs. They are glad this is being discussed because it's bringing some of their inner unit issues to light right now. And they're hoping this could bring forth some remedies, either through a managerial way or maybe in a different way. So I don't think they're frustrated at all that this is being talked about. I think, frankly, the SROs are kind of happy that we're on this topic right now. But I just want to reiterate, I do not want to give the perspective that a drop in morale upon mandating 5/8 is due to them as a sign of like lazy or don't want to do their work. The reason that they stated morale was dropping or that would be a hurt to the unit is because several of them said that their current personal life and work life is operating on a 410. And that's most of us, we all work 410. So we've created our life in our system and our schedules, our custody agreements with spouses if we're divorced. And a lot of that is framed in a 410 manner. by disrupting that into a 5/8, it would throw a lot of their personal lives up. I understand there are things that happen and stuff that are hard. That's in law enforcement, life is change. And so, but that was just made clear to us that the disruption of schedules for a 5/8 would absolutely cause them to not be able to operate in that union, in that union. And that's a cost concern for us because we're already struggling to bring in numbers at the SROs. We're struggling motivating people to get into that unit. The last thing we need to do is lose the numbers we already have in there. And people who want to be there generally, if they can't be there, mandating schedules that I think we're doing ourselves would be counterproductive.
Okay. Appreciate the discussion.
Yeah. I mean, is there any other solution you guys can think outside of mandating 5/8 your side? I know we've given a few that we've seen from our perspective and talking to line level on a managerial or maybe a city height side. Do you guys have any other ideas or solutions that we could bring forth to kind of solve this issue?
Well, I think what you've heard from us is we feel like we don't have enough information about kind of what that caseload looks like, what we're hearing from the SROs and how much they're actually getting pulled out. I think for us to be able to come up with another way of looking at this potentially, that's something that we have to understand.
I guess I haven't heard what I guess from me, what I've heard is a want without the essential data of a need. So I understand there's a want from the school district, but the membership really hasn't been showed a need in, you don't even have an idea what that difference is gonna look like. And we can already see that there are administrative remedies, lighting caseload, they're still gonna be in that school, yes, 4 days a week. We haven't really seen a need and what that fifth day is gonna make.
Well, I think we talked about this previously, but the need is driven by, it's not a want. The need is driven by the contractual agreements that we have with the school districts. And so if we are not providing what the school districts have contracted with the city for and pay the city for, then we're not delivering what we're obligated to deliver.
Did
Right,
we
the
agree?
s- The city,
Yeah,
the city agreed to deliver
did
that.
we agree to a 5/8 in that contract?
No,
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't
It-
sure.
we just-
I haven't read that contract. I have no
it's,
idea.
it's an agreement, but by which we provide the SROs to
Okay.
the school districts.
But it
Okay.
doesn't say 5/8 in that agreement with the school district.
No,
Does it
No.
just give language for like having them in the school? The reason I'm asking is because just as, and I think rightfully so, we were asked, is it true that this is technically anecdotal evidence at this point? Is it not true, or do you guys have data to back up the SROs not being in the schools? Can we also just say, is this technically anecdotal from the school's perspective that we don't have bodies in these schools when they would like them in these schools?
well, I mean, I think it's anecdotal in the same sense, but I think it's been verified by what you've heard from the SROs.
Yeah.
Which is that they're not in the schools. So I don't think, I mean, I think that corroborates what we're hearing from the districts, which is they're not here as much as they're supposed to be. I think at this point, we'll have some further conversation at our next caucus or
Okay.
some point throughout the day.
Okay.
And like I said, I appreciate the conversation. There's, the discussion's good to have, to get to sort of, I won't say a common understanding necessarily, but at least closer to it and maybe start to figure out what some of the issues are and figure out what we might need to do next to start to solve the issue.
Understood.
What do you have next? You have further economic proposals? I appreciate the
Yeah,
costing and running through the prior proposals and your analysis of what the costs are behind those. Do you have any others that you'd like to present?
not at this time. And then we will follow up with Viva. We'll get you some type of. We'll ask the questions,
Okay.
that answer.
I think one of the challenges we're having is without the base assumptions, it's hard for our folks to run these numbers as well. Your base increase.
Yes, understood.
Pretty much everything flows from them.
Can we get a copy of the city's contract with the school district?
Of course you can.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah, that help us. Understood. You've stated, want to stay into non-economic grounds. And you wanted us to rehash, the shift change as well as the promotional process. Is that something you feel you guys can't go forward with unless we handle those outright?
No, I mean, I thought we addressed that last time where what we said was we wanted to get to an agreement on all the non-economic items, but understood that you all were ready to move on to the economics. So that's as far as we're concerned, that's where we are. And we'd have, as you know, a couple of non-economic proposals that are still important to our side. But in order to continue to make progress, now that you've moved into the economic items, we need to see the union's economic proposals and the agenda. I mean, we can't even begin to respond to them until we have
The whole package.
the whole package.
Do you guys have any more non-economic items?
Not at this time.
Okay, so we can say that the two that we have that we're still working through, that's it from the city side on non-economics.
Well, as of right now,
The
but
SROs and the
correct, the promotional process, yes.
the promotional and the SROs, those are our last two before we can get into economic fully.
No, sorry, I don't want there to be any confusion.
That's why, yeah, that's what I'm trying to clarify.
I don't know if we agreed to last time, but what we did last time was I noted we had a couple of items open. You all were ready to move on to economics. We said, okay. And you started to provide some of those. And so we're ready to hear the full economic proposals.
Okay, are you going to
and
give any
package.
economic proposals, or do you have to, for the city side? Is the city not going to get into economic stuff until we've hashed out these final non-economic items? Is that the?
No, that is not our plan.
Okay,
What we need to do is we need to see the full economic agenda from the union. We will do work in order to respond to that. what I'm trying to make sure is not lost in all of this is that these non-economic items, just because we've moved on, doesn't mean that we've taken those off the table and withdrawn those.
Okay.
Is that
I
clearer?
think I'm tracking.
We're ready to talk economics.
And that's for me. That's my question is, and I know we have several that you guys are looking at. You're stating until you have the full compensation package, you can't give an answer, which I can
Correct.
understand that.
Right.
Are there any economic proposals that the city has for the union that they would like to bring forth or see change that we can chew on while we're working at the same time in the name of productivity here?
No,
Instead of us just giving you everything and then we're just waiting on bated breath for the reply. I just, in order for us to actually move forward, I thought if there could be an exchange, I think that would be more effective.
that could potentially happen once everything's out. But right now, we don't have any of that for you.
Okay, so no economic proposals and no further non-economic proposals today from the city.
Well, right now,
That's what I said, from as of now.
yes. Yes,
Okay.
sorry, I heard today and which
Okay,
is-
so I'll just clarify.
I'm hopeful that we're able to get that out later today. It's just
Yes.
right now, I do not have anything for you.
So no economic today as of now, and then no further non-economic as of today from the city.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
I feel like we made that more complicated than it needed.
You know,
Well, it did.
And I'm not saying
I was gonna say the same
you, I
thing.
said we.
I was gonna say the same thing. I think
If you have more non-economic things.
I hear you. Yeah.
We could work through them.
I get
It's
it.
like you have these ones, if you have more for us, we need to have that to chew on.
Yep,
So
I got it,
can
but we
we
don't.
caucus so you can come up back with more non-economic?
No, we need,
Yeah.
we need to get the remainder of your economic items.
okay.
That's where we are.
That was much simpler this time.
That was, you're right.
Just like that. Just like that. To be productive. Are you wanting to talk us?
I guess I'm just trying to, we're trying to work through non-economic items first per the ground rules, but we've started on economic, which is fine. We're trying to keep moving. If you have more non-economic, we'd like to get those worked out or at least worked on. So that, I mean, you saying you don't have any, well, if we were to say we don't have any either, where would we be? So if you have more non-economic items, yeah, it'd be a short day and we're trying to prevent that, just like last time we did too.
Yeah.
That's why we're trying to keep this moving. Because that was the understanding from the beginning. That's what we wanted to do, both sides. So, yeah, I mean, if we had all non-economic items out there, we could still chew on those and continue down the economic road. But we need to have all your non-economic items so we can go that route. So that's why I'm saying, if you need time to figure out what additional things you're going to ask for, non-economic, then that would be beneficial for the movement of this to continue. If not, it's us handing you everything and we don't even know what you guys want. So how can we work through?
Well, we need the economics. That's where we are.
Okay, and we need some non-economics.
Let's call a caucus. We will go back and we will prep. And then we'll be back with you.
Okay.
How long do you need?
Time is 10:40. Let's go. So. 11:30. 11:30. We'll probably need 45 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll have those ready.
Great. Thank you. Sounds good. Thank you.
Choose to acknowledge that my trackpad is too slow.
Just
But
hold it in.
You're probably gonna see me with a mouse here in the next few days, so.
We can get you one when you're ready. to
I'm
take
sure
on
there's,
responsibility.
I appreciate that. So we ran. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I think we were able to get what you were looking for with Viva.
Okay.
These numbers are gonna be based on average deposit from what we were able to run with the department. So the city is currently putting towards a 1%. That's their current Viva payment. And that is coming out to 298,867, and that is based on average composite pay. The new total, adding that 0.5% annually, so it's not cumulative, but just 1.5% annually. Right.
So 0.5% annual.
0.5%. That new total is going to be 448. 301. And that'll be an increase of approximately 149, give or take.
Oh, thank you.
Best as we can get it, I think. So we figured we figured we're running close up to lunch, and so we wanted to maybe try and wait for lunch and then drop the whole thing after chew on during lunch. Totally agree with that. So we'll give you guys a few and then we can break for lunch. How's that sound?
That sounds fine.
Okay, so the two that the union is going to propose, two proposals. The first one, and we're gonna be putting this in, I hope I'm in the right folder, day 4.
Yes.
Yep.
June 5th, union proposals. First one is going to be titled G. Let me know if it's in there, and it is titled parental leave.
Yep.
Okay. And what you're gonna see if you read this is heavily mirrored the city policy. So to paraphrase, the union is looking for the city policy to just asking for a mirror on the contract employees. Please.
When you say heavily mirrored, is it identical or can you?
When I say heavily mirrored, I think there was a, let me, the easiest is if I,
Some of the language, obviously, we refer to our personnel as members, those types of things.
there was one,
I'm looking to see, let's see why you changed that.
the one thing we changed, well, we had to include when for this benefit to become eligible for contract employees. As well as we took out a language consisting of we took out the language in the city policies, paragraph 2, what is parental leave? In the second paragraph, it states parental leave shall only be taken in a single continuous block of time. Thus, incremental leave is not permitted. That sentence was removed, I believe. Let me double check.
And then I just, once you do that, I'd be curious why you removed that.
In regards to the continuous block of time, we figured our issues would be hard for a managerial staffing position, so giving some flexibility to both sides of the aisle. Or union member's spouse could take, a day or a week or a weekend, having it more flexible so that both sides can accommodate for staffing issues.
Okay. How does that work with the 30-day prior notice associated with a child anticipated? Right, so like when it's continuous, it's pretty clear what notice our general employees have to give. I don't know how that works if it's not continuous, 30 day.
Understood, and I believe what we could do if we could create some type of forecasting for if it's not going to be a continuous 10-week block. We can forecast how that's going to be broken up then, and that needs to be made clear before. Because I see what you mean. You can't
Yeah.
just, today's parental day and they're just calling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that also ruins the whole point of removing that paragraph anyway, because then there are staffing issues. So I think maybe creating a forecast for that and having to have that forecast before that leave. It's not saying that people can't take it in a block. We wanted to open the window for flexibility for managerial purposes. We thought that would assist instead of hurting staffing, but notifying is also probably part of that equation as well.
Okay.
Sense.
And then in the previous contract, I'm gonna assume based on this proposal, the parental leave has never been part of the contract. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And is there a particular motivation that you have added?
Not sure what you mean.
Like, where'd this come from? Do you?
Oh, yes, yeah, this has been very clearly brought forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
From you, so your membership is interested in parental leave, I'm guessing, because the younger officers.
Yes.
Do you have a thought about, okay, it's 10 weeks, it's not contiguous anytime within a 12-month period? So could it go like,
We left that language in that says members are only eligible for parental leave once in the 12 months for adoption date. Yeah, so we have that window.
but this could stretch for the full 12 months? In other words, I could take a week this month and then 2 weeks next month and then
As
in 3 months, 4 weeks and 10 months.
Yes, but as we discussed, I think those things would need to be forecasted before that leave is given, because it makes sense if you try and take just a random day or a weekend without any notification. Which is why we took out those 10 blocks.
Stretch it over a full 12,
Well, not to stretch it, but we give that option.
option to stretch it over a full.
Yeah, again, the reason we took out the 10-week block was concerns for staffing. And so we probably should have thought through it, but we said, let's just remove that. So then there could be some flexibility on both sides. But then if we find ourselves on the other side of the spectrum, where then you have people just upping and leaving, I can understand that portion as well from a managerial side. And so clearly, maybe there needs to be some type of forecasting or predate, predate or preset kind of what days are going to be taken. And even in the last, with the city's policy, like it says, the last paragraph of kind of our proposal, to request parental leave, the member shall inform their supervisor of the desire to utilize the leave and complete a request for parental leave form. So this form will be submitted to HR in accordance with the timeline specified. So I think we could find some type of projection through that mode where we could get that done.
When you say projection, are you suggesting it would be sort of scheduled in a certain, a week, this week, or this 2 weeks? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because again, I see the city side of it where we tried to take it out for flexibility to help, but then clearly now I think we've jumped the other side where now we're into unknown territory. And so I think there does need to be some form of projection there. There could be a form of projecting. Now, I don't want to lock people down. Right? Well, you have to take this and you have to take this time. But I can understand the managerial side that there needs to be a need for that.
You guys don't happen to know the average cost? 10 work weeks off for an average officer, do you? I mean, we can find it if you don't. Well, at least one in the
Well, we can
age bracket.
probably do some quick math for you. About $23,000 based on average fringe,
Thank you.
23,392.
That would not account for any backfilling that would have to take place, obviously. That would.
There was need backfilling.
And any,
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
and then our. And our second proposal. For breaking for lunch, I'll put that in there. Going to be proposal J, and that is going to be titled bilingual pay.
Does this mirror the city's policy or?
Again, language changed for changing it to members instead of employees. The pay structure is the exact same. We ran a estimated cost. If theoretically we had 20 officers who could speak a different language outside of English and went through the process and applied and were accepted at our high rate based on the city's pay scale for that, it would be, because it's $3,000 annually if you're oral and written. So with 20 officers, that would be approximately $60,000. If those 20 were all oral, it would be $30,000. I do not know how many officers we have. I think we had a tentative email sent out for people who spoke a different language who would be interested in something like this. We had 12, I believe 12 or 13 that replied to that email. I know there are officers who are bilingual who did not reply to that email.
Do we know
So we
which,
shot high at 20.
do we know which positions we have? Or has it been established what positions does being bilingual would be beneficial? You see what I mean? And which languages you think?
And quick question before I answer, is so far the city, they're testing for this, is it just for Spanish? Or do you guys have other languages?
The focus is on Spanish, but we've designated positions that the city would benefit most from someone being bilingual. So that's what I'm trying to figure out how that would translate to BPDs. Because just because you can speak another language,
Yeah.
if you're not in a position to use that to the benefit of a city service, it doesn't. So like, I'm wondering how we would figure out which positions within the union would be in a position to have this benefit customer service. Does that make sense? But we can look.
I think, yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, there's any position within the police department where somebody can speak a different language is huge, especially in patrol. We're constantly using, specifically Spanish. Obviously, there's other languages out there that we use, but you know, Swahili. I know we have officers fluent in Chinese, Mandarin. We did have one who was good in Cantonese.
Cantonese, yeah.
But in any position within the department, they're gonna be helpful. Because if I need somebody to read and write Chinese specifically in my investigation, whether that guy's in patrol or not, I'm gonna refer to him to help me out. And say, hey, when I was using the language line, was what they gave me
Okay.
correct?
I was about to say, please tell me we don't translate only if we have officers that
yes.
speak the language.
No,
It's gonna-
no,
Yeah, don't worry, don't worry.
not at all, but
I
it's.
started to be like, please don't. I don't
mean,
want to discover that today.
To be fair, look, the city does contract with some translators.
Yes.
They're not always available.
Yeah.
there's a huge vetting process that has to be done to even get them. Whereas we've already vetted our officers quite extensively before they get hired here. And if we have those ones that can help us on calls, I mean, that's huge. I mean, you utilize the language line. A lot of the times, and I don't know 100%, but it sounds like we may be talking, their English is as proficient as one of our officers. So a lot of times we're not getting that interaction like we would with a fellow officer about, hey, what's being said, how it's being said, those types of things we would get by having our fellow officer there.
And I agree, we could look into that a little bit, but I would submit, I'm trying to think of a position that we wouldn't consider forward facing kind of to the community. I don't know how you guys would phrase it, but kind of forward facing to the public, that you deal with the public. I would say most positions sergeant and under within our kind of purview as the union, I think we're all going to be public facing. And again, we are running a rough estimate of 20 people. I don't know if we even have 20.
That's fair.
And just in my personal experience in the last even 6-7 months, I have seen personally on duty, I've seen the requests for Spanish officers rise. I wouldn't say exponentially, but it's risen considerably.
I'll have to look. The city has a list of the most popular languages spelled out by percentage of population. Spanish is obviously the top, but I can't remember
Okay.
the other four.
Okay, interesting.
We can find that.
Okay.
Just because it's nicer to match it with the expectation of growth in the population other than just any language that somebody may have. But
That makes sense.
I'll look a little closer into the city policy and see how we did.
Okay. Any other questions in regards to bilingual?
I've got a bullet point here, and maybe I'm misreading it, and I can't tell where I am on the page, but it says members who receive bilingual incentive pay who are not certified to provide translation services must not translate documents for their department or others. Do you think that's necessary for us to call out? I don't. Why would we have a member receiving bilingual incentive pay who isn't certified?
Well, I think if you want to answer that, I think that,
I think there are specific requirements for translation. So if you're translating a document.
document.
Rather than just being able to read the language. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it's a different level of,
certification, if you're going to use that in any investigation or in any court documents, can require a
and I didn't just
translator.
willy-nilly. I've mirrored that from
Oh,
city
fine.
policy. I didn't willy-nilly. throw
It's
it in
just a
there.
thought. I haven't memorized all of the city policies.
What?
Well, true.
You said yet, so I might hold you to that.
Mhm.
So is it identical then to the city policy with the exception of the
So-
reference to members?
So the language that is in our proposal is going to be mirroring city policy. There are bullets that were removed, but the
Okay.
language that we have, I didn't change substance, like I wasn't trying, I just changed to like designations such as member, employees to members.
Right.
But there were bullet points that were removed on city policy in reflection to this proposal, if that makes sense. But the substance of it was the same.
And we can obviously put them side by side to compare,
Yes.
but do you happen to have or recall?
Yeah, I'm
what
trying
things
to.
were that you removed?
Yeah, let me, for example, during the city policy has a employee eligibility one. and we've kind of already discussed this, the bullet point that says employees must have a public facing position and use the second language. And I think you've talked about that on the hierarchy of languages that you have in the city and kind of a determining factor of what we would consider public facing. So that bullet point wasn't placed in there, frankly, because police in essence is community contact. So things like that. And I'm trying to look at others, but that's kind of a flavor of how this was created.
Okay, any other questions on that? Good. Okay. Does that mean,
Those are the ones we have for you now.
Okay.
Give you guys something to kind of look at.
should break for lunch?
Lunch then. Okay.
And then when we come back, just so we have it sort of set out, you'll continue with the economics?
Yeah, we'll have the rest of our economic
Great.
proposals after.
Okay, that'd be perfect.
Okay.
Does 1 o'clock work, or do you want 12:30 or
One's good.
I'll go with one.
1, 2? So, okay. So
Okay.
we'll put it till 1.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay. So finishing up with our economic proposals. Okay. We'll be dropping in, this will be proposal L. Will be titled on-call pay. Then that you will see two different call out pay as well as on call. So those, though included in the same proposal, there are two different functions. So currently, our on call is, we have 5 people that rotate on call throughout the year annually, and that is currently $106,433. What we are asking for, and they typically, as of right now, when they're on call, they're getting 1 hour of straight pay a day. We're asking to increase that to 2 hours of straight pay a day. So we would essentially just be doubling that 106,433 to 212,867. And at the bottom of the proposal is in regards to called out, and that's getting called out on situations that we don't get to predict. There's a call out that occurs where, call it SOG, SOG, that contains whatever detectives are needed for whatever crime occurs, as well as canines, drone pilots. It's a process occurs. And so for us, we were wanting to make sure that those other parties that are getting called out are being included in this call out pay that already existed. So we're not asking for an increase to the call out pay. We are simply confirming that those teams who were getting called out are getting paid for said call out pay, if that makes sense. So if like a call out happens and there's like SOG, some type of barricaded subject or something where patrol level, now we're bringing in specialized units who can do things that we don't want our average patrol person doing to level of danger. We're bringing out either detectives or we're bringing out a SWAT team. And with that SWAT team, we now have drones attached to it and we have canines attached to it. They were getting called out. We just want to emphasize that they're also now getting that call out pay to go with that call out. That makes sense. And just
just to clarify, if a member is in CID and they're called out, they have a contractual 4-hour minimum. If somebody's in patrol and gets called out, they have a 2-hour minimum. So you're
Correct. We haven't
proposing.
touched those. Yep, not touching those.
Okay.
We're just, when it comes to a call out,
Specific
yes,
assignments would be,
because all these people are coming out anyway. When the call out happens now, we just haven't updated the language of the contract to reflect that these bodies are getting paid for their call out. So canines and drones are a part of SOG. We're just wanting to make sure that they're getting that.
So they're not on call, right? They're not getting paid to be on call. They're just answering their phones
right.
because they're on these specialty units. So we're asking for a minimum call out if they get called out.
And currently they get a minimum of 2 hours because they're not, if they're not CID.
The minimum's 4 for a call out, correct?
That's for
For CID, correct? Yes.
But for, say, I'm a patrol officer and I get called out as part of a SWAT operation, I get a minimum of 2 hours.
If I'm in patrol.
If you're in patrol or anywhere else outside of CID. Right. If I'm an NCO,
The 4 hours, so
airport guy.
just to be clear,
That's totally
I know. So right now, there are 5 people who are on call. And they get a minimum, if they are called out, they get a minimum of 4 hours, those 4 detective positions. These members are not on call. So right now, as it stands, if I get called out or an SOU member gets called out or a canine, and sorry, I shouldn't have said SOU, SOG. So that includes entry, sniper, spotter teams,
CMT.
and negotiators, crisis negotiation team, and
And
EOD. Right now, if they get called out as part of this larger operation for a specific skill, they only get a minimum of 2 hours.
So they are getting 2 hours now.
Everybody gets 2 hours now. We're asking for that language of those specific specialty units to be increased to a 4-hour minimum. Additionally, in there are detectives. We have a large incident that requires additional detectives, not the ones who are on call. They would get that minimum of 4 hours as well.
And an SRO?
SROs, yes,
Because they're one of the 5 that are.
they're one of the 5 that are on call.
Gotcha.
So sometimes we have larger incidents that require more than just the call out detectives.
My understanding, and let me clarify, the current practice is even if you're not specified as on call, but you are a detective and you're called out to assist with a larger investigation, you are getting that 4-hour minimum currently. You don't get just a 2 hour if you're a detective or an SRO. Is that correct? So we're simply looking at adding SOG canine drone pilots to that.
To the 4 hour, yes.
Correct.
And those are people not getting paid, Courtney, if that makes sense. They do not get paid to carry their phone or anything. They are literally coming in because the needs of the department on their day off.
They're subject to callback.
Yeah.
They're not.
They're coming in, so we're asking for incentive for that.
To try and cost that out. Because it's kind of tough to cost out, but what we did was we took the average overtime fringe rate of an officer. And so that's approximately $320 an hour.
For 4 hours.
Sorry, $320 for a 4-hour window. So that's the average OT fringe rate for that 4-hour call out. And so taking that by however many get called out is the best that we could try and estimate what that would look like.
And so that cost estimate that you ran, is that for each, that includes all of the proposed changes to this section? Is that right?
So the on-call pay,
Yeah.
currently 106,433.
Mm-hmm,
Ask for that to go from 7 to 14.
mm-hmm,
That new cost, the proposed cost for that is 212,867.
right, okay,
With the call out, came up with was the average overtime fringe rate for 4 hours.
oh, so just per call out,
Per call out.
Gotcha.
Having that number and then being able to just replicate that forever, how many people get called out, which that changes every time. I don't have a number for
Yep.
that. Would be the best way to cost that out or to try and get an estimate for them.
I understand. Any other questions related to this one? Okay, I think we're good.
Be putting in proposal B. It's titled certification pay. It currently stands. We have a certification system through Idaho post-training, different requirements to then have to apply for a different level of certification. That just signifies the level of training or the amount of training that one has sought after or gained within their profession. We are asking for an increase of $15 to each level. So as of right now, it stands, it's 25 for intermediate, 25 for advanced, and 25 for master. We are asking for that to be raised to 40 for intermediate, 40 for advanced, and 40 for master. Currently, per the certifications that we appreciate you guys getting to us, that is currently costing $148,200. With this proposal, we would have that new increase would come out to $237,120. So an increase of about $89,000 annually.
And was there a reason for the proposed increase other than just my money?
We listed out how many had certifications, but it wasn't everybody. I'm surprised people weren't putting in for them. So I think it's a way for us to just incentivize officers to become certified in the state. If they have the time and the training hours, but they just haven't put in for the certificate, which I found to be kind of interesting. And so for us, it's simply a way to show that the department is giving the training, the officers are seeking the training. We're showing the training we've received essentially through our certifications. Maybe the office is backed up, I don't know. But I'm surprised not everybody.
Do you happen to know how many are?
Currently, we have, with the numbers you provided to us, we have 217 officers currently getting paid on a certain level. I don't know if you've said this, I think additionally, what this program is 10 years, even before last contract, we used to have a step pay scale
Yeah.
with education incentives where if you had a degree, 4-year or better, you got paid on the top step all the time. What this does for our members, it incentivizes education or training, either or. It incentivizes recruits with those degrees, but whether it's a bachelor's degree or better, or a master's degree, they're eligible for these certificates much quicker.
Yeah.
So it is basically it is an education incentive for the membership.
Okay, we good there? All right, understood. Thank you.
Third one we will be placing is a ISIL to our previous proposal. So this is proposal N. And hopefully it works. Did you guys get it? It's telling me I'm gonna go. You guys see it?
Yep.
Okay. So the current rate that the canines are being paid, 13 canines for their half hour on the days they're not working, is 59,298. That's based on average fringe. With that proposal, we'll be asking for another half hour. So it's 1 hour of straight pay per day when they're not scheduled. So instead of 30 minutes on their days off, it's an hour on their days off. So the proposal is doubling that to 118,596.
It might seem obvious, but I just want to clarify, if a member who is a canine handler is scheduled to work Friday, but takes the week off, normally they would get a half an hour off from their shift to care for the dog. What would the practice expectation be if they were taking the time off? Do they get an hour of overtime because they're off duty? Or do they simply have to burn 9 hours of leave and the day off?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, and you can jump in if I'm off here. So we didn't change the language when it came to half hour or an hour. We changed the time, but the language stayed when not scheduled to work that day in order to care for the canine. We're keeping the schedule the same. Those days off, they typically get 30 minutes for canine care. We're just asking for 1 hour of straight pay for canine care for those days off. So I don't think taking leave, they're not going to be typically scheduled for those days anyway. I don't think that's going to impact the canine care. Because it's the days that they're typically scheduled off.
Right.
That covers
I
that.
just want to make sure we're not on the hook for an hour time just because somebody took a week off. We're now paying 7 hours of overtime that week instead of 3.
Yeah, I think we're agreeing on that. I think the language when not scheduled to work that day, I think it's pretty tight. And I understand when you're scheduled to work that day, I don't know if that's common practice right now with the canines. I might be speaking out of turn.
My belief is that's the common practice, is that they don't get overtime just because they're taking the day off.
Yes.
In other words, they're still scheduled to work.
But they're just taking time off, and I would agree with that. And just for clarification, this is not overtime. It is just an hour of straight. So we would essentially just be increasing from a half to an hour.
That one I would like to clarify, because I don't
Okay.
know currently if they get a half an hour of overtime or if it's a half an hour of straight time for canine care on their days off. No,
I would say that,
They get a half hour of straight time
straight
on
time.
their days off,
yeah,
and they go home a half hour.
and so they're flexed on their work days for that.
And what's the rationale behind going from a half hour to an hour? I mean, does that correlate with how much time they're fact spending Are we finding that 30 minutes, it doesn't cover the activities, or is there something else behind that?
I believe that's part of it, but it's also a way, and I don't have the write-up, but it's also a way for our K-9 unit to compete with the other agencies. So kind of what we were reading last time, our current K-9 unit is at the bottom of the list when it comes to incentives to be a K-9. And so this is just a way for us to try and bolster them as
More of a competitiveness.
sort of, yeah, to give them something to work with. You have that, yeah.
Yeah. Just to rehash,
Yeah.
surrounding agencies, Nampa PD gets 5% plus K-9 care. Caldwell gets 30 minutes of OT a day, 7 days a week, and are currently developing a percentage compensation as well. Meridian gets 45 minutes of straight time
Every day.
every day, 7 days a week. Ada County gets 30 minutes of OT a day, 7 days a week, and Garden City gets 4 hours per 2 week pay period.
So it gets us up there a little bit to compete more.
Questions? All right, understood. Thank you.
Okay. Next proposal. My apologies, I did not take an alphabetical letter. But it is going to be titled CID. And this is in regards to criminal investigations. So cost wise for this, everybody designated as a detective is currently getting a 2.75% incentive. That is currently being paid out at, and we're running this off of average fringe for 40 officers. I believe there's 41, give or take. Don't quote me on that. So this is for an average of 40 officers. That 2.75 rate comes out to 133,802. What we are asking for is a bump in that incentive from 2.75 to 4%. And that increase approximately $60,000, putting that new total to 194, give or take a little bit. This is a way for us to continue to try and incentivize those to leave patrol and fulfill specialties if they would like to. A lot of people feel bound to patrol because of the shift differential and that there's no specific differential that comes with being a detective. We understand that maybe there are other benefits that people find working in city. But there have been proposals raised by the members looking for a way to incentivize those who maybe would like to leave patrol and go work a specialty, but feel maybe they can't do so due to a financial reason. For us to try and bolster these specialty units to make that choice a little bit for them.
So Rose, they get to work shorter days. Think about it.
You know,
It wasn't funny, chief.
And
Just, I would touch on the detective thing a little bit more, just so Courtney can understand. Basically, when a detective responds out, they basically take on functional supervision, over lieutenant, I mean, they give directions to sergeants, lieutenants on major cases on the scene of a call. So it also bolsters that. When they come out, they're the guy in charge. No matter what, because they're taking over that case. They're the ones gonna have to do all the cleanup work on it, present it to a prosecutor
testify.
after everybody else has gone home.
And then proposal.
Sorry, one last question on that. That Chief probably knows the answer to, but do we need more detectives? Is that what we're saying? Because I heard what you said in terms of incenting folks to move into a specialty and the differentials that they leave when they leave a night shift. There's a
I can-
financial impact, but do we also need, do we need more of them? Is that what we're saying?
Well, we need more cops in general,
Of course.
Yeah.
but with that said, I can give you an example. Last week, we had an opening, or the week before, for a violent crimes detective.
Mhm.
Had one person put in. One person out of 250 cops roughly. So there's a good example of a need. One person puts in, that's not a huge list of people wanting to go be a detective.
Right, but I guess,
We believe one of the reasons for that, and this is, we can call it anecdotal, but I've spoken to a number of officers who have aspirations to one day go do something outside of patrol, but have clearly stated they feel bound in their current financial situation to stay in patrol due to the financial implications. And so those that are in CID are telling us we need something simply to just drum up more excitement to go into what you actually want to go into. And so this is a way for us to try and levy that or stop the bleeding, frankly, when it comes to a lack of motivation to leave patrol.
right.
I'm not saying we
So-
want to kick people out of patrol, but when we do have openings for a violent crimes detective, it'd be nice for them to not just have to look at one person.
So it's not an issue, and I appreciate that example. That makes sense to me. But it's not, what you're not saying it's an issue that there are multiple openings that are just unfilled. It's when there is an opening, there's not enough candidates.
Yeah, I don't think we're at a breaking point where we're stuck with openings that have gone unfilled,
Got it.
but I don't want to get there. I don't, frankly, just because you're standing on the edge doesn't mean we have to jump off to fight.
Okay, understood.
Next proposal is proposal E. And this is titled Base Wages. So looking at as far as we could with city budget, expenditures, revenues, things of that nature. The first year at 7.5% for the base wage comes out to approximately 2.9 million. If you guys want more numbers, give me, I can go down to the cents, but again, this is kind of an approximation, so. Year one at 7.5 would be 2.9 million. Year two with the 6.5 would be 2.7 million. 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 Year 3 at a 5% comes out to about 2.2 million. And year 4 at a 4% comes out to about 1.8 million. And that gives us a estimated total of 9.6 over those 4 years. Those 4 years giving us an average base wage of 5 3/4.
So how based on, allocated FTEs or what currently still, I mean, is
I
this
think we ran them
The
at
314 number.
Yes.
14?
Yep.
So you're anticipating no growth in new officers? This is just.
Like the
314
city
for 40.
opening the cap for 314, is that what you're saying? We've projected at 314. I can't, I don't know. If the management wants to go to the city and try and get up that cap,
Sure.
amen.
I don't
but-
think it's an actual cap, right? The city can hire as many officers as they want.
Many as we can get. But yeah, those were ran off of 314.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, the year 2 is compounding on year 1 and compound 2 and so forth. Thank you.
Proposal?
Okay. Economic package.
Okay. Got it. Um. So we need, I think, to go back and review this,
Understood.
do our work, before we can come back with a response. It's going to take some time, as you well know, having
I
just
would be surprised if it didn't.
been through the process. So,
Shouldn't take that long.
for-
An hour. Just go back and
for starters,
You can just say sure to everything, we'll be out of here. We didn't take tomorrow off, we do this right.
When you didn't think my comment was funny.
Mine was.
I got Todd laughing.
Yours was fun.
So, how long do you think we'll probably need to adjust it, but, and I would start with, like 90 minutes. Be my best guess,
3:30.
3:30. Okay. And then we'll keep you posted.
And just for clarification's sake, is this in order to handle the entire compensation package or just the first ones we sent, or just an attempt to reply to all said proposals?
Well, I don't know the answer to that quite yet. But like I said before, we needed to see everything in context so we can understand it.
Okay.
My intention, our plan would be to get you as much as we can, as soon as we can. And so if we can come back in that period of time and get everything out, and give you something then to go back and look at and think about,
Yeah.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
I also don't want to keep you sitting there forever.
Yeah.
While we do our work, but we'll do it as efficiently as we can and try to get something back. We'll come back at 3:30 and at least report back what we have.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay,